There are many ways to lower your Amazon ads ACOS, but how do you do so using negative keywords? I'm David Goldenberg, a 20-year digital marketing vet. I recently led the marketing for a brand that I grew from 30 million a year to 57 million a year. And I started my PPC agency, 11 Ads for Brands, based on that. Now, in order to lower your ACOS and increase your profitability using negative keywords, you need to answer the following questions. First, why start with negative, right? Why not try, for example, lowering your bids, pausing an ad, pausing some keywords? Why should you start specifically with negative keywords over any other type of tactic or strategy to lower your ACOS? Second, what are some of the mistakes that gurus tell you to do in using negative keywords? How do you avoid those mistakes? Because we don't want to actually increase your ACOS, right? The third question we need to address is, where can you find negative keywords even without spending money, even before you run your first ad campaign? And after you have run ad campaigns, where can you find additional negatives that are more specific to your own ads and products? Last, how do you apply your keywords to your campaigns? There's different ways to do this, and there's ways that will save you time down the line because you're not just going to apply negatives in one campaign. And if you follow these techniques, you'll get lower ACOS, not just today, but going on. This will help you get a process in place so that you consistently get lower ACOS out of the gate. Why should you start with negatives? So there's a few other alternatives that you can try to use, but what I want you to understand is the main principle is control. The more control you have, the better your ads will be because you can optimize more accurately. What do I mean? So let's consider a couple of the alternatives. First of all, instead of negatives, I could try decreasing my bids. Okay, now if I decrease my bids, I'm decreasing them for every search term that keyword brings up. Now, in 2026, the algorithm doesn't just show you for the keyword you targeted, even if you're on exact match. The most precise form of keyword targeting on Amazon also uses what's called intent matching. And so if Amazon thinks that a keyword, a search term, matches the intent of what you're targeting, they'll show your ad for it, even if those words are not actually in your keyword. I'll give you an example. If I put, for example, potted plant as my keyword, if somebody writes household fern as their search term, right, that's a kind of plant that would be in a pot, right? They didn't use the word potted and they didn't use the word plant, but the intent matches so my ad could show up. So if I lower my bid, then I'm not just going to miss out on the good keywords, on the bad keywords, right? I won't just pay less for those I convert low, but I might also miss on the keywords that perform well. And so bids basically throws out the baby with the bath water. You don't want to do that. You want more control. What's another alternative? Okay, you could also just pause your keyword outright, right? Give it a break, Mac. But if you do that, you have essentially the same problem, right? Instead of lowering your bid, you're basically giving 0-cent bid for all of those search terms. Some of them may be good, some of them may perform poorly. The same problem arises if you go more broadly. If you pause your ad, if you pause your ad group, if you pause your campaign, if you pause all your ads, right? So all of those things are going to throw the baby with the bathwater. And so the most narrow form of control you have with your negatives. And that's why you want to start with negatives. But what are some negative keyword mistakes that you hear from gurus and I want to warn you against so that you don't just repeat the same mistakes other people are doing and get the same lousy results? The first thing you need to know about this is that there's at least two kinds of negative keywords. Okay, so the first one is called negative exact, and the second one is negative phrase. Now, what's the difference between these two? If you do negative exact, that will only block the exact term that you put in plus plural forms of that. So if you put in, again, potted plant as a negative, you will negate potted plant and potted plants, and that's it. Okay, so if somebody puts in potted plant for bedroom, your ad can show up, right? But if for whatever reason that doesn't work for you, then you need to figure out all of the different search terms that don't work and block them all individually. That is a lot of work, and it's really unnecessary. But you see a lot of gurus saying, hey, you know what? This thing is not converting, so just add all those bad converting keywords as your search, all those bad search terms into your negatives with exact match. And they don't want you to use phrase because, hey, you might miss on something good. But what I want to tell you is that phrase is actually a huge time saver, and it saves your budget, allowing you to spend money on what has a chance to convert and learn the lesson. So if, for example, you find that the word potted doesn't work for you, okay, so what you want to do is you just negate potted, okay, and then everything with this in it, for example, potted plant, potted flower, right? None of those search terms will trigger your ad, and so you avoid all of those bad clicks. That's a big money saver. Another problem that you have with many gurus' advice is that they don't really know when you need to negate things. And this happens especially with some of those who promote a FBA lifestyle, who want to teach you a full course on FBA, and PPC is just one of their things amongst others. So they'll tell you something like this. The average keyword on Amazon converts, let's say, around 10%, okay? That's if you're doing well. There's a lot of different exceptions. If you're more expensive, you'll see lower conversion rates. If you're less expensive, you can see higher. You can see 15, 20, 30% conversion rates. But in many cases, you'll see, up to $50 per unit, you'll see often conversion rates around 10%. And so their thing is, if I convert at 10%, then if I have 10 clicks and 0 sales, that means that this keyword is no good. Now, what's the problem with that? What happens if on the 11th click, it works out, right? Or the 12th? Are you still happy that you negated that keyword? Probably not. So what you really need to do is look for a pattern. The pattern is not based on the 10 clicks. The pattern would be based on the amount of sales, the number of conversions, in other words. So pattern recognition, basically, you need to look for at least 3 occurrences of something. So 3 occurrences, if you have a 10% conversion rate, means you would need 30 clicks to get 3 orders, right? So if after 30 clicks, you got 0 orders, then that is a pretty good indicator that you're not going to convert. And in fact, we figured this out based on some Jewish wisdom that's written in a series of books known collectively as the Talmud. But they basically explain this idea about 3 being a pattern. And we then took this question and put it to 2 separate math PhDs, and they ran the numbers and said, well, if your average conversion rate is 10% and you have 0 orders, how many clicks do you need in order to see that this is a keyword you should negate? Do you know what number they came back to us with? 35. Before that, we were using 40 to be conservative and err on the side of caution. The point is, 35 clicks is enough to add a negative phrase match, because you have a very high likelihood that that search term is using that word are not going to convert. Now, what happens if your conversion rate is lower or if it's higher? If it's higher, let's say you're converting 30%, right? So, or 33%, just to make math easy, right? 1 in 3 clicks is converting for you. Wonderful. Now, that means in theory that you would only need 9 clicks in order to see 3 conversions. But here you're getting into data rates where there's so little data. With a flip of a coin, you could easily have a big change, right? What if you have, let's say, 10 clicks in a row with no orders? If you're averaging 33%, it's also very likely that the next 2 or 3 clicks, you're going to get even 1 or 2 orders. And so you don't want to negate too early, even if your conversion rate is high. In cases like that, where you're at 20%, 30% conversion rates, I would recommend you don't go any lower than about 26 clicks roughly. And if you're converting a lot lower, we sell, for example, some products that go for $100 to $200 a unit, which is high for Amazon. And the conversion rates there tend to be 2 to 4%. So if you have 2%, that means 1 in 50 clicks. So are you going to wait 150 clicks? Maybe, but that can be actually pretty expensive. So what you want to do in that case is the following. You need to also consider the amount of time and the amount of spend. So what is the amount of profit that you make per order? So if you're making, let's say, $30 in gross profit per order, right? After you've deducted your FBA fee and your referral fee and your cost of goods sold and your storage and all the other things. This is your gross profit before you pay yourself and your staff, okay? So I would multiply that by 3 and see how much spend am I willing to spend in order to figure out if this keyword is going to work or not. And that is a imperfect but useful rule of thumb for those cases where you have a low conversion rate. Okay, now let's talk about where you can find the negative keywords, including a strategy to find the negatives without even spending any money at all to begin with. So suppose your product is side tables, right? You can type that into Amazon, and then what you're going to see is search suggestions, right? So for example, side tables, wooden, side tables, let's say boho, modern, right, with lamp, etc. Now, what you want to see is which of these does my product match up to and which of them does it not match up to. So if my side table is not wooden, for example, it's metal or it's something else, so you would negate wooden. Similarly, if your style is modern, then it's not boho, so you can negate boho, and going back to what we said earlier, with a negative phrase match, right? So all of the search terms that include boho, right, then you won't show up for those search terms. Do you have a lamp? Do you not have a lamp? That'll tell you if you want this search term or not. Now, you can do this also in a more clever way. You can do it alphabetically. So you write your main keyword and then you write just the letter A. Okay, and you see all of the search suggestions with the letter A. So side table and lamp. Side table, I don't know, anatomical. What in heck an anatomical side table is, I don't know. But if your side table is not one of those, then you would want to negate that. And then you can repeat that, right? So you write the same search term and you put in the letter B and you'll get all the suggestions with B, right? So you get boho and so forth. And you can do it yourself. You can have a virtual assistant do it. This doesn't require much thought. You put those in a spreadsheet and you just say, okay, which are a match for my product and which are not. Now, this is very good to help you avoid a lot of irrelevant search terms before you get started. What about once you've gotten started, right? So after the fact, you might discover that, little known to you, but you had, 35 clicks on search terms that included the word lamp, and you got no orders. Then that's a point where you can go ahead and negative phrase that out. There's also a great tool called Amazon Brand Analytics. It's in Seller Central, okay? And you have a search term frequency, excuse me, that's not letter F. Frequency, we'll leave it that report. And what that does is it tells you how frequently is any search term searched on Amazon in the given date period, how frequently it was searched, right? So for example, you can look 2 weeks ago, you can look a month ago, and this will tell you during that time period, not only how frequently it was searched, but also what are the top 3 products by the percentage of clicks and also by the share of conversions that they got. So if there are 100 orders, this one got, let's say, 5 orders, that would be a 5% conversion share. The other one got, 10 orders, it's a 10% conversion share. It doesn't mean they're converting 10%. In order to get those 10 orders, maybe they had 200 clicks. So 10 orders on 200 clicks mean they converted 5%, for example, right? Maybe the other one that got 5% of the orders, in fact, had that on, 20 clicks, so they have a 25% conversion rate. So that is a word of caution, understanding the data. And again, you can look for what terms over here are relevant and which are irrelevant, and that can inspire your negatives there as well. Another thing that you may consider is using seasonal negatives. And this report, because it gives you the data based on a specific time frame, can be very helpful in that regard. What does that mean? So there are some keywords that are obviously more competitive than others. But when you're in season, since people are buying at higher rates, you can afford to target that keyword because it'll convert well enough for you at least to break even or to profit, depending on your ad strategy. When you see that the frequency is decreasing, that means that that search term is going out of season. And it's not usually just about the frequency, but it tends to be that the conversion rates also drop in association with the volume. So there's fewer people searching. There's also a lower percentage of those who are searching converting into buyers. And so if you're seeing something that you're kind of iffy about, right? For example, the word wooden, right? If you're selling side tables and you've got the word wooden, yours is particle board. So technically that's made from trees, but it's not full wood blocks, right? That it's being cut out from 2x4s or whatever. So in season, your particle board side table might get a pass, but otherwise you might find it hard to convert on that. And so this can tell you, when am I in season, and I can target these. And conversely, if I'm not in season, maybe I should just add these keywords during the off season as negatives, and then have a reminder for myself in Google Calendar or whatever, a reminder email that says, hey, this is, the start of the season, remove these from your negatives so you can target them as well. Okay, now we need to talk about how to apply negative keywords to your ad campaigns. What I want to encourage you to do is to make a negative library or even a keyword library, either in Excel or in Google Sheets. And what you're going to do over there is you're going to write your list of products. So product 1, right, with the SKU and the ASIN. And product 2 with your SKU and ASIN, etc. And over here, you're going to list out all of the negatives that you found. And what that allows you to do, you can do it, not just at the product level, you can also do it at the product line level, right? So for example, if none of your side tables match the boho style, right? So then you can have a list of negatives, a library for all of your side tables. And you would have the keyword boho in there. And it's usually helpful to have both one like this and like that, so that in the product level, you're going to build a list of things that are wrong for that one specifically. For example, if this is large, right? It's tall, it's whatever. So you would have the opposite keywords in there as negatives. For example, small, right? It's not a small side table, it's a big one. At the line level, you would have things that apply to all of them. And what you're going to do is whenever you make a new campaign, you open this sheet up and you just copy paste all your negatives into that new campaign. And right out of the box, you're going to avoid a lot of irrelevant keywords. Okay. Again, you're going to implement them, like we said earlier, with negative phrase match. There are a couple of exceptions I want to talk about and that justify using negative exact. So what are those situations? There are some search terms where the keywords are all relevant and they show up in successful search terms for you, but the order, for example, is wrong. Okay, so if you have potted plant for living room, you may be surprised to see that living room potted plant doesn't perform the same way. You may get conversions, but it may not be enough to make it profitable. And so in a case like that, you don't want to negate potted, you don't want to negate plant, you don't want to negate living room, right, as negative phrase. But living room potted plant doesn't work, so you would write in, right, living room potted plant exact, right? And so you need to have that as a separate column for those instances. So the order of the words can matter. That's one scenario. There are also some scenarios where the words are in the right order, but there is, something extra about that campaign, about that search term, where there's a lot of related search terms that work, but that one, for whatever reason, doesn't. And so you just need to negate that one, right? Like with a little pincetta, they call it, right? That looks like a leaf, I don't know. It's a good thing I do PPC and not graphic design in my own skill set, not illustrations. So the point is, this kind of thing is a second scenario. It's very exceptional. You may not even encounter it, but that can exist as well, where you want to use a negative exact match for your campaigns. If you'd like 20% higher profit from your ads in just 6 weeks, free, then apply in the link below. It's a manual process. We're not just throwing you on some tool, and so we can't take everybody. That's why you need to apply. Check it out before other people do.